A day after my wife's funeral, the pastor called me. "You need to come see this, and don't tell your daughter and son-in-law." Hi viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Drop your location in the comments right now. I want to know who's joining this story from around the world. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The phone rang at 7 in the morning, the day after I buried my wife of 51 years. Pastor David's voice was barely a whisper. "Walt, don't say my name out loud. Are you alone?" I wasn't. Corinne was already in the kitchen, making coffee like she owned the place. "Now, before I go any further, I need to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you stopped looking at what they were doing? I mean, really trusted them with your home, your money, your whole life, because you believed blood meant loyalty?" Because that's where I was, 74 years old, just buried the woman I loved for half a century, too broken to notice the wolves circling my door. And here's the thing about grief: it doesn't just break your heart, it blinds you. It makes you sign papers without reading them. It makes you nod when you should ask questions. It makes you trust the people standing closest to you, even when they're the ones holding the knife. Most people miss the warning signs until it's too late. Subscribe now so you catch what I almost didn't. What could be so urgent that a pastor would tell a grieving man to hide a phone call from his own daughter? Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you look at everyone you love. I woke up that morning the same way I'd woken up every morning for the past 3 weeks, reaching for Dolores. My hand found cold sheets. Empty space. The indent where her body used to rest had already started to flatten out, like the bed was forgetting her too. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand. The mystery novel she never finished was still bookmarked at page 47. Her slippers were still tucked under the bed, waiting for feet that would never fill them again. The house was quiet, in a way it had never been quiet before. No humming from the kitchen, no shuffle of her footsteps down the hall. No radio playing the oldies station she loved because it reminded her of our first dance. Just silence. Heavy and thick, like the air itself was grieving. I lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember why I should get up at all. We buried her yesterday. 51 years of marriage, and now she was in the ground at Oak Grove Cemetery, next to her mother and her grandmother, and I was alone in a house full of her things that still smelled like her lavender lotion. The phone rang. Not my cell phone, the landline. The one Dolores insisted we keep because, what if the power goes out? The one that hardly ever rang anymore because everyone we knew had switched to texting years ago. I picked it up on the third ring. "Walt," Pastor David's voice, but not his normal voice. This was low, rushed, almost a whisper. "Walt, don't say my name out loud. Are you alone?" My heart did something strange. A little skip, like it remembered how to feel something other than grief. No, I'm not alone. Who's there?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Then Corinne appeared, in the bedroom doorway. Coffee mug in hand, smile on her face. "Morning, Daddy. Who's on the phone?" I looked at my daughter, my only child, the baby I held in the delivery room 46 years ago, the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms during Sunday sermons, the woman who stood next to me yesterday while they lowered her mother into the ground, and I lied to her. For the first time in my entire life, I lied to my daughter. "Wrong number," I said. "Telemarketer." Pastor David's voice came through the receiver, barely audible. "Come to the church, now. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell Corinne. Don't tell Bryce. Walt, I'm saying this as your friend of 30 years. You might be in danger." Corinne was still standing there, watching me. "Okay then," I said into the phone, keeping my voice steady. "No thank you. Please take me off your list." I hung up. Corinne tilted her head. "Those calls are so annoying. You want some coffee? I made a fresh pot." "Sure, baby, thank you." She smiled and walked back toward the kitchen. But something was different. I was seeing her differently now. The way she'd already rearranged the coffee mugs, Dolores always kept them handles out. But now they were handles in. The stack of papers on the kitchen counter that hadn't been there yesterday. The way Corinne moved through the house, like she was measuring the rooms. I got up slowly, got dressed, walked to the kitchen where Corinne had set out a mug of coffee and a plate of toast I didn't ask for. Then Bryce walked in. My son-in-law, Corinne's husband of 12 years, financial advisor with some big firm in Nashville, nice suits, white teeth, firm handshake. The kind of man who makes you feel like you're being sold something even when he's just saying good morning. Walt, he said my name too loud, too cheerful for the day after we put Dolores in the ground. How you holding up? Sleep okay? Not really. That's normal. That's completely normal. Grief takes time. He set down a bag of bagels, like he was delivering a gift. Hey, listen, I know this isn't the best timing, but there's just a few more signatures we need to finalize Mom's accounts. Standard stuff. Won't take 5 minutes. Mom. He called my wife Mom. He'd been calling her that for years. It never bothered me before. But now, standing in my kitchen, hearing him talk about signatures the morning after her funeral now, it made my skin crawl. Can it wait? I asked. I'm pretty worn out. Bryce and Corinne exchanged a look. Quick, almost invisible. But I caught it. Of course, Corinne said. Of course it can wait, Daddy. You rest. We'll take care of everything. I nodded and walked back to the bedroom. My hands were shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think. Pastor David's warning was bouncing around my head like a pinball. You might be in danger. From what? From whom? I looked around the room, really looked. For the first time since Dolores got sick, my wallet was on the dresser. But not where I left it. I always set it next to my watch, both items lined up with the edge. Now the wallet was crooked, closer to the mirror. My checkbook was in the top drawer. I opened it. The register was turned to a page I didn't write on. Someone had been looking through it. In the hallway, I heard Bryce's voice, low and careful. We need to get those signatures today, before he starts asking questions. Corinne's response was too soft to hear. I stood up, walked to the doorway, made my face look tired, which wasn't hard. I think I'm going to take a drive, I said. Clear my head. Corinne looked up from her phone. Sure, Daddy. Don't be long, okay? Bryce has some papers that need your signature before the bank closes. She smiled at me. That same smile she's had since she was 6 years old. I smiled back. I won't be long. But for the first time in my life, I didn't trust my own daughter's eyes. If your family asked you to sign something the day after you buried your spouse, would you read every word, or would grief make you sign blind? Tell me in the comments. Because what comes next depends on knowing the answer to that question. The tea went cold before I remembered to drink it. Dolores always reminded me, Walt, your tea's getting cold. She must have said it 10,000 times over 51 years. I never thanked her for it. Not once. Just one of those little things you don't notice until it's gone. Now the cup just sat there on the kitchen table, growing a skin on top, like everything else in this house that was slowly dying without her. I didn't go straight to the church that morning. I couldn't. My head was spinning with Pastor David's warning, and I needed to think before I did anything. So I walked through the house instead, room by room, looking at everything like I was seeing it for the first time. The living room, her chair by the window where she did her crossword puzzles every Sunday. The blanket was folded wrong. Dolores always tucked the edges under, but someone had just draped it across the armrest. The dining room, her china cabinet, the one her grandmother brought over from Ireland. The glass door was smudged, like someone had opened it and closed it without wiping down the handles, the way Dolores always did. The bedroom, her jewelry box on the dresser, open. My heart stopped. Dolores kept that box closed. Always. The latch was tricky, you had to press down and slide at the same time. She told me once it was her way of knowing if anyone touched it without permission. Now it was open. And her mother's pearl earrings, the ones she was going to give to Corinne someday, were gone. I moved to her desk. The old roll top she inherited from her father, where she kept all our important papers, our bills, our tax returns. She had one drawer she always kept locked. Said it was personal. I never asked what was inside because a man trusts his wife. The drawer was unlocked now, and rifled through. Papers out of order, folders bent, her handwriting on files mixed up with typed documents I didn't recognize. I remembered something then. The last week of her life, when the hospice nurse said she didn't have long, Dolores was weak, barely eating, drifting in and out of sleep. But she grabbed my hand one morning and said, clear as day, remember the church safe, Walt? Pastor David. The church safe. Promise me. I thought it was the morphine talking. I said, yes, honey. The way you do when someone you love is dying, and you just want them to feel heard. I should have listened. The front door opened. Corinne walked in with a casserole dish. Store-bought, I could tell by the aluminum pan. Dolores would have made it from scratch. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson, from down the street, dropped this off. Thought you might be hungry. I wasn't hungry. But I thanked her anyway. She set the casserole on the counter, and her eyes swept the room. Not looking at me. Looking at everything else. The desk. The jewelry box. The hallway toward the bedroom. Calculating. That's the word that came to mind. My daughter was calculating. Bryce was in the hallway behind her, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. He thought I couldn't hear him. He was wrong. The timeline is tight. We need to move before he starts asking questions. He paused. Listened to whoever was on the other end. No, he's still in shock. He'll sign anything right now. That's the whole point. I kept my face empty. Picked up my cold tea. Took a sip. Pretended I didn't hear a word. Corinne was watching me again. You okay, Daddy? You look tired. Just miss your mother, I said. Which was true. Just not the whole truth. Later, after they left, I found the family iPad on the kitchen counter. Corinne had been using it to manage Dolores's medical appointments during the hospice weeks. The screen was still lit from a notification. I picked it up. Email. From Bryce's firm. Subject line that made my blood turn to ice. Ari Hensley Estate Guardianship Timeline. I tapped it before I could stop myself. The email was short, professional, addressed to Corinne. It outlined a plan to file for emergency guardianship over me. The grounds? Cognitive decline exacerbated by grief. The timeline? 10 days. My daughter's signature was at the bottom, giving her authorization to proceed. 10 days. In 10 days, they were going to try to take control of everything I owned. I set the iPad down. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. Guardianship. They were going to have me declared incompetent. Take my house, my savings, everything Dolores and I built, over 51 years. And my own daughter was signing the papers. I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. Pastor David was waiting. And I was done pretending I didn't see the wolves. Have you ever realized that someone you love had been planning against you, not for days, but for months? What was the moment you knew? Tell me in the comments, because I have a feeling some of you have stories worse than mine. Pastor David didn't hug me when I walked into his office. He locked the door. That's when I knew this wasn't about grief counseling. Grace Fellowship Baptist sat at the corner of Oak and Belmont, same as it had for 90 years. Red brick, white steeple, the kind of church where everybody knows everybody's business. Dolores and I were married here in 1973. Corinne was baptized in the same font where I was baptized as a boy. We'd sat in the third pew from the front every Sunday for 5 decades. This place was sacred to me, but today it felt different. Today it felt like a bunker. Pastor David, 64 years old, built like a linebacker, hands rough from years of construction work, before he got the calling, stood behind his desk with a look I'd never seen on his face before. Fear. Pastor David was afraid. Sit down, Walt. I sat. He didn't. What I'm about to give you, he said, I've been holding for 6 months. Dolores brought it to me last spring, back when she was still strong enough to drive herself. She asked me to put it in the church safe. Said I was only to give it to you after she was gone, and only if I believed something was wrong. My throat went dry. Why would she do that? Because she didn't trust anyone else. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. Thick, worn at the edges. My name written on the front in Dolores's handwriting. I recognized the pen, blue ink. The same pen she used for grocery lists, birthday cards, notes she'd leave on my pillow when I worked late. At the funeral yesterday, Pastor David continued, I watched your son-in-law check his phone during the eulogy. I watched him whisper to Corinne during the committal prayer. I saw the way he steered you away from certain guests, the ones who might ask questions about the estate. You think, I don't think anything. But Dolores did, and she was the smartest woman I ever met. He slid the envelope across the desk. She told me to trust my gut. My gut says something is very, very wrong. I stared at the envelope. My name in her handwriting. Her scent, faint, still clinging to the paper. I opened it. 3 documents. 3 pages that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The first was a draft will. Typed, professional, official-looking, but unsigned. It named Corinne and Bryce as sole beneficiaries. Everything, the house, the accounts, the investments went to them. All I got was something called a life estate, which meant I could stay in my home until I died or until I required professional care. In the margin, handwritten in a script I didn't recognize, was a note: need her signature before Tuesday. The second document was a photocopy of a quitclaim deed. The kind of thing you sign to transfer property ownership. This one transferred the house on Maple Ridge Road, my house, the house I'd lived in for 43 years, into Corinne and Bryce's names. The date on the deed was 2 weeks before Dolores died. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be hers. But something was off. The way she wrote her D, the way her L had a little curl at the top. This signature was close, but not quite right. And the notary seal at the bottom listed a name I'd never heard: Vernon Slade. Notarized on a Sunday at 7:43 p.m. Who gets documents notarized on a Sunday evening? The third document made my heart stop. A handwritten note. Dolores's handwriting. No question. Shaky, she must have written it when she was already sick, but unmistakably hers. My darling Walt, if you're reading this, I was right to be afraid. They think I don't notice, but I do. I've been watching for months. The papers they slide across the kitchen table. The signatures they need, just for the bank. The way Bryce looks at our house, like he's already spent the money. I tried to stop them, Walt. I tried to slow them down. But I'm running out of time, and they know it. Check the bank, check the deed, check everything. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop them. But I found someone who can help. Find Opal Finch. She knows what they did. And Walt, don't trust anyone who tells you to trust them. I love you forever. Dolores. I read it 3 times, then 4. Dolores knew. She knew she was dying, and instead of resting, instead of letting go, she spent her final months gathering evidence, fighting back, trying to protect me from beyond the grave. Dolores saw the danger and prepared. Most people don't. Subscribe now, don't wait until it's your family. And if you're not subscribing, tell me why below. I read every comment. Pastor David handed me a tissue. I didn't realize I was crying. Who is Opal Finch? I asked. I don't know. Dolores never told me. But she said you'd know what to do when the time came. I folded the documents carefully, put them back in the envelope, stood up. Thank you, David, for keeping this. For watching out. He put his hand on my shoulder. Dolores was family. So are you. Whatever you need, I'm here. I walked out of that church a different man than when I walked in. I didn't know who Opal Finch was, but I was going to find out. Write down that name, Opal Finch. You'll need to remember it. What do you think Dolores discovered? Tell me in the comments. Opal Finch was 81 years old, lived alone in a farmhouse outside Maryville, and hadn't spoken to anyone from Knox County in 3 years. She answered the door with a shotgun. You must be Walt, she said. Dolores told me you'd come. You're late. Now, I've lived in Tennessee my whole life. I know country people. I know the way they protect their land and their privacy and their business. But there was something about Opal Finch that told me this wasn't just about being careful. This woman had seen something, and she'd been waiting a long time to tell someone. Ma'am, I apologize for showing up unannounced. Don't apologize. Apologizing wastes time. She lowered the shotgun but didn't set it down. Come inside, wipe your feet. Don't touch anything until I say so. Her farmhouse was exactly what you'd expect from a woman who'd spent 40 years working in the Knox County clerk's office. Organized chaos. File folders stacked on every surface, color-coded with tabs. A desktop computer that looked older than my grandchildren. Charts on the wall covered in sticky notes and red string like something out of a detective movie. She poured 2 cups of coffee strong enough to strip paint and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. I know why you're here. Dolores called me 8 months ago. Said her son-in-law was up to something, and she couldn't prove it alone. Asked me to help. Help with what? Opal's eyes sharp and blue. Not a trace of confusion in them locked onto mine. Do you know what I did for 40 years, Walt? I recorded every deed, every transfer, every property sale in Knox County. I know what a real signature looks like. I know what a real notary seal looks like. And I know when something smells like fraud. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a photocopy of the same quitclaim deed Pastor David had given me. See that notary seal? Vernon Slade? I nodded. Vernon Slade lost his notary license in 2019. Got caught falsifying documents for a title company in Chattanooga. But that's not the interesting part. She paused, let it hang. Vernon Slade died 2.5 years ago. Heart attack. Buried in Mountain Home Cemetery. I felt the blood drain from my face. A dead man notarized this document. 2 weeks before Dolores died, Opal tapped the paper with one bony finger. That signature is forged, Walt. Your wife never signed that deed. Someone forged it and used a dead man's stamp to make it look legal. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from rage. But here's what really got Dolores's attention. Opal pulled out 3 more folders. These are copies of quitclaim deeds processed through your son-in-law's firm in the last 2 years. Different clients, all elderly, all recently widowed. And all of them notarized by the same dead notary. 3 folders, 3 families, 3 people who trusted the wrong person with their life's work. Dolores found the first one by accident, Opal continued. She was helping with paperwork for a church member whose husband had just died. Saw the notary name, thought it looked familiar, and did some digging. 1 case is a mistake. 3 cases is a pattern. 4, I said quietly. 4 cases, including mine. Opal nodded slowly. 4 that we know of. There might be more. I sat there, staring at those folders, trying to process what I was hearing. My son-in-law wasn't just trying to steal from me. He was running a system. A business built on grief and paperwork and signatures that nobody reads because they're too busy crying. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. Opal laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what? Copies? Suspicions? I'm an 81-year-old woman who got fired from the clerk's office because I wouldn't stop asking questions. You know what they called me? Paranoid, difficult, a troublemaker. She leaned forward. But Dolores believed me, and she spent the last months of her life gathering enough evidence to prove it. The question is, Walt, are you brave enough to finish what she started? I looked at those folders. 4 families, 4 lives destroyed. And my daughter's name connected to all of it. What do I do? Opal handed me a piece of paper with 3 names written on it. These are the other families. Visit them. Hear their stories. Once you understand the pattern, you'll know how to break it. I took the paper. My hand was still shaking, but not from rage anymore. From determination. Opal walked me to the door. Before I stepped outside, she put her hand on my arm. Your son-in-law isn't just stealing from you, Walt. He's running a business. And you're not his first victim, you're just his latest. I nodded and walked to my car. 3 names, 3 families, 3 chances to find the evidence that would bring this whole thing crashing down. Flag those 3 families. Their stories will intersect with mine. How many victims do you think Bryce has created? Drop your guess in the comments. I'll tell you if you're right. Her name was Lucille Rayburn. Her husband died 8 months ago. She lost her house in 6 weeks. And she had no idea how it happened. I found her in Sevierville, living in her sister's basement. The address Opal gave me led to a split-level house with a welcome mat that looked brand new, like it hadn't been there long enough to collect any dirt. A woman about my age answered the door. Gray hair, tired eyes, hands that wouldn't stop twisting together. Mrs. Rayburn, my name is Walter Hensley. I was hoping I could ask you some questions about your husband's estate. Her face went pale. Who sent you? A mutual friend, someone who believes you were cheated. She stared at me for a long moment. Then her eyes filled with tears. Come in, she whispered. Please. Come in. Lucille's story came out in pieces, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask, but was afraid to say it all at once. Her husband, Glenn, died of a stroke last spring. They'd been married 42 years, owned their home free and clear, had savings, had a plan. Then the paperwork started. Glenn's nephew worked for this financial firm in Nashville, said he could help with the estate, the taxes, the transfers. I didn't understand any of it, so I let him handle things. She wiped her eyes with a tissue that was already falling apart. He came by every few days with papers to sign. Always said the same thing. Just routine, Aunt Lucy. Just routine. I was so tired. So sad. I signed everything he put in front of me. And then 2 months later, I got a letter. Certified mail. Said the house had been transferred into the nephew's name as part of a family trust. Said I had 30 days to vacate. She started crying again. I called lawyers. 3 of them. They all said the same thing. I signed the papers. The transfers were legal. There was nothing they could do. This happens every day to someone's parent. Subscribe so you know the signs before it's too late. I sat with Lucille for an hour, listening to every detail, writing down names and dates in a notebook Opal had given me. The pattern was identical to what they'd tried with me. Death, grief, paperwork, signatures, transfer, eviction. But Lucille wasn't the only name on that list. The second stop was harder. Roderick Ambrose was 71 years old and currently living in a memory care facility in Oak Ridge. According to his file, he had dementia and required round-the-clock supervision. According to his former doctor, a man I found through Opal's network, Roderick was sharp as a tack 6 months ago. No signs of cognitive decline, no memory issues, nothing that would require institutional care. But 3 days after his wife's funeral, Roderick signed a power of attorney, giving his son full control of his finances. 2 weeks later, he was admitted to Pleasant Pines Memory Care. All his accounts were transferred the same day. I went to Pleasant Pines, told them I was an old friend. They let me look through the window of the common room where residents sat watching television. Roderick was there, thin, gray, sitting alone in a wheelchair. I waved. His head turned, his eyes met mine, and they were clear, not confused, not lost, clear. He pressed his hand against the glass and mouthed 3 words, "Get me out." My blood went cold. Behind me, I heard footsteps. A nurse I didn't recognize was walking toward the front desk, phone already at her ear, eyes locked on me. I didn't wait to find out who she was calling. I left. But I didn't leave alone. I left with evidence. I left with witnesses. I left with a pattern so clear that even a grieving old man could see it. Bryce wasn't making mistakes. He was running a machine that chewed up elderly widows and widowers and spit out their life savings. And my daughter was helping him do it. That night, back in Opal's kitchen, I spread out everything we'd gathered. 3 families, 3 identical patterns, 3 lives destroyed by paperwork and trust. Is this enough? I asked. Opal shook her head. Not yet. You need someone who can make this official, someone who knows the law and isn't afraid to use it. She handed me another piece of paper. One name this time. Garrison Webb. Elder law attorney. Used to be a prosecutor before he went private. Lost his own mother to a scheme like this. I looked at the name. The address was in Knoxville, 30 minutes away. He owes me a favor, Opal said. Tell him I sent you. Tell him everything. I drove home that night with my head full of names and numbers and patterns. The house on Maple Ridge Road was dark when I pulled into the driveway. No lights, no Corinne, no Bryce. Just the shadows. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the house Dolores and I had built our life in. The house where we raised our daughter. The house they were trying to steal. Tomorrow I would call Garrison Webb. Tomorrow I would start fighting back. But tonight, I just sat in the dark and talked to Dolores. I found them, honey, I whispered. I found the evidence. And I promise I won't let them win. The wind picked up outside. For just a second, I could swear I smelled lavender. Go public now with what I know, or keep digging until the case is airtight? What's your move? Tell me in the comments, because I'm about to make a decision that changes everything. This isn't sloppy, Attorney Garrison Webb said, spreading the documents across his desk like a surgeon examining x-rays. This is architecture. Someone built this system to be invisible. I sat across from him in a worn leather chair that had probably held 100 other desperate people before me. His office was nothing fancy, old law books lining the walls, carpet that needed replacing 10 years ago, a coffee maker in the corner that looked like it ran 24 hours a day. But the man behind the desk was sharp. I could see it in his eyes. The way he looked at those papers wasn't casual. It was predatory, like a hunter tracking prey. Opal had told me Garrison Webb used to be a prosecutor, spent 15 years putting criminals away before he went private. Now he specialized in elder law specifically, cases where families turned on their own. Why'd you switch? I asked him. From prosecutor to this. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed to a photograph on his desk, an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. My mother. She died in a nursing home 3 years ago, but before that, my brother convinced her to sign over everything, the house, the accounts, her car, said he was protecting her from scammers. Webb's jaw tightened. Turns out, he was the scammer. By the time I found out, it was too late. I nodded. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be ready. He tapped the quitclaim deed with his pen. Because what they're doing to you is the same thing, and we're going to stop it. For the next hour, Webb walked me through everything. The legal terms, the strategy, the timeline. The dead notary's signature was a federal crime. Using a deceased person's notary stamp to validate documents is fraud, plain and simple. That alone could put Bryce behind bars. The quitclaim deed transfer fell under Tennessee's elder financial abuse laws. If we could prove the signature was forged, the entire transfer could be voided. The house would stay mine. But the guardianship petition was the most urgent threat. If Corinne and Bryce convinced a judge that I was mentally incompetent, they could take control of everything: my finances, my healthcare, my freedom. I'd be a prisoner in my own life. The good news, Webb said, is that guardianship requires proof of incapacity. If you can pass an independent cognitive evaluation, their petition falls apart. And the bad news? They know that, which means they're going to accelerate. The moment they suspect you're fighting back, they'll push the court date forward, try to get you declared incompetent before you can prove otherwise. He leaned back in his chair. You have maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to save everything Dolores and I built over half a century. Webb pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. Here's the plan. First, we file an emergency petition to void the property transfer. The forged signature and dead notary give us grounds. Second, we request a forensic handwriting analysis on Dolores's supposed signature. That takes time, but it's critical evidence. Third, and this is the most important, we get you evaluated by an independent physician, someone who has no connection to your family, someone who can testify under oath that you're mentally competent. And fourth, we file for a preservation order. That freezes all transfers on your property and accounts until the investigation is complete. Nothing moves, nothing changes, everything stays locked down. I watched him write. Each word was another brick in a wall I was building between me and the people trying to destroy me. There's one more thing, Webb said. He circled a line on one of the documents. The notarization timestamp. 7:43 p.m. on a Sunday. What about it? Notary offices aren't open on Sundays, and even if they were, 7:43 p.m. is after business hours. He looked at me. Someone made a mistake. They backdated the document but forgot to check the calendar. That Sunday was Easter. Easter Sunday. The day Dolores and I spent at church, then had dinner with Pastor David and his wife. The day I have photographs to prove exactly where we were. A dead notary. An impossible timestamp. A forged signature. The evidence was mounting. Will this be enough? I asked. It's a start, but we need more. We need pattern. We need other victims. We need someone on the inside who can testify to what they saw. I thought about Lucille Rayburn in her sister's basement. Roderick Ambrose behind that window. The 3 families on Opal's list. I can get you pattern, I said. I can get you victims. Webb nodded. Then let's get to work. He filed the preservation order at 4:47 p.m. on Thursday. I remember the exact time, because I watched him do it. Watched him sign his name, and hand the papers to his assistant, and tell her to file it immediately. By Friday morning, I received a certified letter. The return address was a law firm in Nashville. Expensive letterhead, gold embossing. The subject line made my blood run cold. Petition for emergency guardianship, Walter Hensley. They weren't just fighting back. They were trying to end me. Predict. Will the judge grant my preservation order or Bryce's guardianship petition? Which one gets there first? Tell me in the comments, because the race just started, and only one of us can win. I found the second letter where we kept the tax receipts, as if our entire marriage was just another line item to reconcile. But this one wasn't about money. It was about goodbye. Webb needed financial records, bank statements, tax returns, anything that showed the normal flow of money before Bryce started moving things around. So I went back to Dolores's desk, the old roll top where she kept everything organized in a way only she understood. I'd already been through the main drawers, but this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. A seam in the wood at the back of the bottom drawer. Too straight to be natural. I pressed on it. Nothing. Pressed again, harder. Still, nothing. Then I remembered. Dolores always said you had to know the trick. I slid my fingers along the edge, and found a small notch, barely visible, pushed it sideways. The panel popped open. Inside was a space about the size of a shoebox. And in that space was an envelope. Cream-colored stationery. The kind Dolores used for important letters, wedding announcements, sympathy cards, the note she wrote me on our 40th anniversary. This envelope was addressed to Corinne, but it had never been mailed. The seal was still closed. A stamp in the corner, never canceled. I stared at it for a long time. My daughter's name in my wife's handwriting. A letter that was written but never sent. I opened it. Corinne, I am writing this because I cannot say it out loud. Every time I try, you change the subject, or Bryce interrupts, or you tell me I'm confused. I am not confused. I am dying. But I am not confused. I know what Bryce is planning. I have seen the papers he brings for me to sign. I have heard the phone calls he thinks I sleep through. I have watched you help him, watched you become someone I don't recognize, and it breaks my heart more than this cancer ever could. You are my daughter, my only child. I held you the day you were born, and I promised God I would protect you forever. But I never thought I would need to protect your father from you. I am begging you. Corinne, don't do this. Don't take everything your father and I built together. Don't leave him with nothing. Don't become the kind of person who steals from the dying and the grieving. Bryce is not worth your soul. No amount of money is worth your soul. Please, stop this before it's too late. For your father, for yourself, for the little girl I used to rock to sleep who knew right from wrong. I love you. I will always love you. But I am so afraid of what you're becoming. Mom. The letter was dated 1 month before Dolores died. She knew. She knew everything. And she tried to stop it, not with lawyers or courts, but with a mother's plea to her child. But Corinne never got this letter. Dolores must have decided it would only make things worse, speed up their timeline, give them a reason to act faster. So she hid it. And she prepared another way. I put the letter down. My hands were shaking. Then I remembered something. The last time Dolores was awake, really awake, 3 days before she died, she'd grabbed my arm with a strength I didn't think she still had. Her eyes were wild, desperate. Walt, she said. Walt, you need to listen. The desk. The church. Don't trust. I hushed her. Told her she needed rest. Told her everything was going to be fine. She cried, and I held her hand and told her to close her eyes. I didn't listen. She was trying to warn me, and I didn't listen. The guilt hit me like a truck. My wife spent her last months fighting a battle I didn't even know was happening. She gathered evidence. She hid documents. She left instructions. And I was so busy grieving that I couldn't hear her. Dolores left a map. I almost missed it. Subscribe so you don't miss yours. But she wasn't finished. In the same hidden compartment, behind the letter, was something else. A thumb drive. Small, silver. The kind you get at any office supply store. On the side, in Dolores's handwriting, for Webb if I'm gone. She knew. Even then, even dying, she knew I would need a lawyer. She knew I would need proof. She prepared for everything. I drove to the church that night. Pastor David let me use the computer in his office. I plugged in the thumb drive with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. 2 files. The first was a spreadsheet. Dates, account numbers, transfer amounts. Every suspicious transaction she'd noticed in the last year of her life, documented with the precision of a woman who knew she was running out of time. The second file was an audio recording. I clicked play. Dolores's voice filled the room. Thin, tired, but steady. The voice I'd loved for 51 years. This is my testimony. My name is Dolores Hensley. I am 72 years old, and if you're hearing this, I am dead. I held my breath. Someone I love killed me slowly by stealing everything I built. This is who did it. This is how. And this is the proof. Dolores left her testimony from beyond the grave. Type "Justice for Dollars" in the comments if you're ready to see her proof. Because what she recorded changes everything. The message was one sentence. Preservation order granted. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled for the first time in 2 weeks. Webb called me an hour after the ruling came through. Judge Marianne Keller, a sharp woman in her 60s, who'd been on the bench for 20 years, had reviewed our emergency petition and sided with us. All property transfers involving my name were frozen. Nothing could be moved, sold, or transferred. until the investigation was complete. The guardianship petition wasn't dismissed, but it was delayed. Judge Keller wanted to see the results of my independent cognitive evaluation before she'd even consider moving forward. Without proof that I was incompetent, Corinne and Bryce had no case. "This is good news, Walt," Webb said. "But don't get comfortable. They're not going to stop. They're going to adapt." He was right. The same day the preservation order was granted, I got a call from Nadine Holbrook at First Tennessee Bank. She was the teller who'd been helping me review my accounts, a quiet woman in her 50s who noticed things other people missed. "Mr. Hensley, I wanted to let you know we flagged a transfer from your joint account. $47,000 moved to an account in your son-in-law's name. The transfer happened 2 days after your wife's funeral." 2 days. While I was still numb. While I was signing whatever they put in front of me. "The good news," Nadine continued, "is that the preservation order covers existing accounts too. The money can't be withdrawn. It's frozen until the court says otherwise." $47,000. That was Dolores's life insurance payout. The money that was supposed to cover funeral costs and medical bills. They took it before the dirt settled on her grave. I thanked Nadine and hung up. My hands were shaking again, not from fear this time, but from anger. That evening, a card arrived in the mail. Heavy cardstock, expensive printing. A photograph of Dolores on the front, one I recognized from our trip to Gatlinburg 2 years ago. The text read, "You are invited to a celebration of life for Dolores May Hensley, hosted by her loving daughter, Corinne Hensley Mercer, and son-in-law, Bryce Mercer." The event was scheduled for Saturday at the Rolling Hills Country Club, the same club where Dolores had volunteered in the gift shop for 20 years. The same place where we'd celebrated our 50th anniversary. I called Webb. "It's a trap," he said, without hesitation. "They're going to parade you around in public, show everyone what a loving, supportive family you have. Then they'll use the photographs and testimonials as evidence in the guardianship hearing. We're not exploiting him, we're caring for him. So I shouldn't go?" "I didn't say that." Webb paused. "If you don't go, they control the narrative. They tell everyone you're confused, isolated, refusing to participate in your own wife's memorial. That doesn't look good either. Then what do? You go. But you don't go alone. You go with eyes and ears. People who can witness what really happens. People who can testify later if needed." I thought about that. "Pastor David, Opal Finch, Nadine from the bank. I know some people," I said. "Good, because Saturday is coming fast. And whatever they're planning, you need to be ready." I hung up the phone and looked at the invitation again. Dolores's face smiled back at me from the cardstock. The same smile I'd loved for half a century. They weren't celebrating her, they were using her. And they wanted me to stand there and smile while they did it. Attend the event and gather evidence, or refuse and let them control the story? What would you do? Tell me in the comments, because Saturday is coming, and I've already made my choice. They labeled every photograph her favorites. I'd bought one of them. My name wasn't on the card. The Rolling Hills Country Club was decorated like a wedding reception, white tablecloths, flower arrangements, soft music playing through hidden speakers. Photographs of Dolores covered every surface, arranged in silver frames with little cards underneath, describing each one. Mom's favorite beach trip. Mom's favorite Christmas. Mom's favorite sunset. I stood in front of a picture from our vacation in Destin, 15 years ago. Dolores was smiling at the camera while I held an umbrella over her head because it had started raining and she didn't want to go inside yet. The card underneath said, "Mom always loved the rain." No mention of who was holding the umbrella. I moved through the room slowly, studying each photograph, each card, each carefully constructed piece of the story they were telling. Half of them didn't include me at all. The ones that did cropped me to the edge, or showed only my shoulder, or placed me in the background while Corinne stood front and center. This wasn't a memorial, it was a campaign. Bryce was working the room like a politician at a fundraiser, shaking hands, accepting condolences, putting his arm around Corinne while guests murmured about how hard this must be for them. I heard the phrases as I passed by. Such a devoted daughter. They've been taking care of everything. Poor Walt is really struggling, isn't he? Good thing he has family to lean on. The narrative was already set. Everyone in this room believed that Corinne and Bryce were the grieving caregivers, and I was the fragile old man who couldn't function without them. But I wasn't alone. Pastor David stood by the refreshment table, pretending to examine the cheese platter while his eyes tracked Bryce's movements across the room. Opal Finch had arrived early, claiming she knew Dolores from the garden club, which was technically true, even if they hadn't spoken in 20 years. She sat in a corner with a cup of tea, and a memory that missed nothing. Nadine from the bank had come as a +1 with her friend from church. She smiled politely at everyone while taking mental notes of every conversation. My witnesses, my safety net, my proof that whatever happened tonight, someone would remember the truth. They planned this moment for months. I just figured it out with hours to spare. Subscribe, be the person who sees it coming. The slideshow started at 7 o'clock. Corinne stood at the podium and spoke about her mother with tears in her eyes, real tears. I'll give her that. She talked about Dolores's kindness, her strength, her love for family. She didn't mention that she was trying to steal everything her mother left behind. After the slideshow, Bryce took the microphone. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about how much he loved his mother-in-law. He looked directly at me and said, "Dad, we're so grateful you could be here. Mom would have wanted us all together." The crowd murmured approval. I smiled and nodded. Let them see what they wanted to see. Then I slipped away to the coat room. I wasn't looking for coats. I was looking for Bryce. I found him 10 minutes later, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. "The preservation order is temporary," he was saying. "We just need him to sign the voluntary transfer before the evaluation. One signature. I can get it tonight." Pause. "I know. I'll handle it. He's emotional right now. Easy to guide." Another pause. "Just have the papers ready. I'll bring them to you Monday morning." He hung up and turned around. Our eyes met. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Surprise. Maybe fear. Then the mask came back. Big smile. Warm eyes. Loving son-in-law. "Dad, there you are. I was looking for you. Just needed some air," I said. "It's a lot to take in." "Of course it is. Of course." He put his hand on my shoulder and guided me back toward the main room. "Listen, Dad. There's just one small thing we need to wrap up tonight. For Mom's memory, it'll take 2 seconds." We stopped by the dessert table. Bryce reached into his jacket and pulled out a pen. "Just a signature. Authorizes us to handle some of Mom's charity donations the way she would have wanted." I looked at the pen, at his smile, at the expectation in his eyes. "I'd love to, son," I said. "But first, let me introduce you to someone." I turned toward the main entrance. Attorney Garrison Webb had just walked in. I just flipped the board. Screenshot that moment in your mind. The tables are turning. Drop a comment if you saw that coming. And if you didn't, don't feel bad. Neither did Bryce. 7:43 p.m., Sunday. The paralegal read from her notes. "Signature witnessed, notary present, except the building's access logs show no one entered after 5 p.m., and the notary had been dead for 2 years. Her name was Meredith Callahan, 26 years old, hired straight out of community college by Bryce's firm in Nashville. She thought she'd be doing real legal work, filing motions, researching cases, maybe sitting in on depositions. Instead, they gave her a box of notary stamps and told her to handle routine estate paperwork. We sat in Webb's conference room, me, Webb, Opal, and Meredith. The blinds were drawn. The door was locked. Nobody knew this meeting was happening. "Start from the beginning," Webb said. "Tell us everything." Meredith's hands were shaking. She'd brought a laptop and a planner and a stack of printouts that she kept rearranging on the table, like she needed something to do with her fingers. "I was hired 18 months ago," she began. "At first, everything seemed normal. I was doing administrative work, filing, organizing. Basic stuff." "When did that change?" Webb asked. "About 6 months in, Mr. Mercer Bryce called me into his office, said he had a special project he needed help with. Elderly clients who were transitioning their estates. Said it was delicate work, time-sensitive, and he needed someone he could trust." She looked down at the table. I was flattered. I thought it meant he saw potential in me, saw me as someone who could handle important work. "What did he ask you to do?" "Process documents, quitclaim deeds, powers of attorney, beneficiary changes." He gave me a box of notary stamps and said to use them. I asked about the notary signatures. Shouldn't someone actually be witnessing these? And he said it was fine. Said the clients were housebound, couldn't come to the office, and this was how we handled remote signings. Webb leaned forward. Did you ever meet any of these clients? No, never. I just processed the papers he gave me. And the timestamps? Meredith pulled out one of her printouts. He was very specific about the times. Always after business hours. Weekends, holidays, late evenings. I asked why once, and he said it was when the clients were most alert. Medication schedules, he said. She slid the paper across the table. It was a spreadsheet. Names, dates, times, document types. 12 clients, 12 families. Millions of dollars in assets transferred through the same system. I didn't know the notary was dead, she said quietly. I swear I didn't know. I thought it was just a stamp, a formality. I didn't realize. When did you figure it out? I asked. She looked at me with eyes that held guilt and fear, and something else I recognized. Resolve. 3 months ago. One of the names on the list, Rayburn, Lucille Rayburn, showed up in a news article about elder exploitation in Sevierville. The article said she'd lost her house after her husband died. Said the paperwork was suspicious, but no one could prove fraud. Meredith took a breath. I recognized the name. I'd processed her documents. I'd used that stamp, and I realized I wasn't helping people. I was helping destroy them. The room went quiet. Why didn't you go to the police? Opal asked. Because I was scared. Because I didn't have proof. Because my grandmother. Her voice broke. My grandmother died in a nursing home in Alabama 3 years ago. My uncle had her declared incompetent and took everything. By the time I figured out what happened, it was too late. She died alone in a place she hated, surrounded by people who didn't care about her, and my family got nothing. She wiped her eyes. I couldn't stop what happened to her, but I can stop this. Webb reached for the laptop. You said you kept records. Meredith nodded. Everything. Dates, files, timestamps, instructions. I downloaded the metadata from every document I processed. I have access logs from the building showing when people actually entered and exited. I have emails where Bryce gave me specific instructions about which stamps to use and which dates to backdate. Why? I asked. Why would you keep all of that? She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that I understood completely. Because my grandmother taught me that memory isn't enough. You need paper. Paper doesn't forget. Paper doesn't lie. Webb gathered the documents and the laptop and started making copies. This is enough, he said. This is more than enough. We're going to the district attorney. How soon? Opal asked. Today, this afternoon. This stops being a civil case the moment we hand over evidence of criminal fraud. I watched Meredith as Webb worked. She was young enough to be my granddaughter. And she was risking everything, her career, her safety, maybe her life, because she couldn't stand by and watch while people like me got destroyed. Thank you, I said to her. What you're doing takes courage. She shook her head. What you're doing takes courage. I'm just finally doing what I should have done months ago. Webb finished the copies and handed them to his assistant. File these with the DA's office immediately. Mark it urgent. 2 hours later, we got a call back. The district attorney wanted a meeting. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. But before I could process what that meant, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a photograph. Me and Opal Finch on her farmhouse porch. The photograph was taken from the tree line, maybe 100 yards away. The angle showed us clearly 2 people who weren't supposed to be meeting. Someone had been watching, and they wanted me to know. The walls are closing in, but on whom? Is this enough evidence to bring Bryce down? Or have I just made myself a target? Tell me in the comments. Because someone out there has been watching every move I make, and I don't know who they're going to tell. The letter from Bryce's attorney was polished and cold. 14 pages of threats, dressed in legal language. My response was 3 sentences. It arrived by certified mail on a Tuesday morning, thick envelope. Expensive paper. A Nashville law firm's letterhead embossed in gold. The kind of document designed to intimidate before you even open it. I opened it anyway. The motion to dismiss called our preservation order a misunderstanding between family members during a period of grief. It described me as confused, emotionally compromised, and unduly influenced by outside parties with questionable ESCO motives. It demanded that Webb's firm be sanctioned for harassment and threatened a defamation lawsuit if I didn't withdraw my claims within 30 days. Attached was a new emergency guardianship petition. This one was worse than the first. It claimed I was a danger to myself, based on what they called erratic behavior, leaving the house without informing family members, meeting with unknown individuals at undisclosed locations, refusing to sign routine financial documents. Every act of resistance I'd taken over the past month was now being used as evidence that I was losing my mind. I sat at Dolores's desk and read the whole thing twice. Then, I called Webb. "They're scared," he said. "This is what desperation looks like, in legal form. Doesn't feel like desperation. Feels like a freight train. That's what they want you to feel. But look at what they're not doing. They're not addressing the evidence. Not the dead notary. Not the forged signature. Not Meredith's testimony. They're attacking you personally, because they can't attack the facts." He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing something and feeling something are two different things when your own daughter is trying to have you declared incompetent. What do? We respond. And we respond with everything. Webb's rebuttal was 112 pages. It contained Meredith's testimony and all her documentation, the dead notary evidence with timeline analysis, Dolores's voice recording, transcribed and authenticated, bank records showing the unauthorized transfers, access logs proving impossible timestamps, and 12 other families with identical patterns of exploitation. The final line of our filing read, "Mr. Hensley does not require a guardian. He requires justice." We submitted it on a Friday. By Monday, the forensic handwriting analysis came back. I sat in Webb's office while he read the report out loud. The questioned signature shows significant deviation from known exemplars in letter formation, pen pressure, and stroke direction. The capital D lacks the characteristic loop present in all authenticated samples. The baseline is inconsistent with the subject's documented writing patterns. He looked up at me. "Professional opinion. The signature on the quitclaim deed is likely a forgery." Likely. In legal terms, that meant almost certainly. Someone had faked Dolores's signature on a document designed to steal our home. The evidence is stacking up, but Bryce isn't finished. Subscribe now, you need to see how this ends. That night, my phone rang. Corinne's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Daddy?" Her voice was different, smaller. The way she sounded when she was 8 years old and had done something wrong and knew she was about to get caught. "Corinne." "Daddy, please. You have to stop this. You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand exactly what I'm doing." "No, you don't." I heard her take a shaky breath. He's not who I thought he was. There are things I didn't know, accounts I didn't know about, people he works with that I've never met." "Then help me stop him." Silence on the line. Long, heavy silence. "I can't," she whispered. "Daddy, I can't. He knows people. The kind of people who make problems disappear." The line went dead. I stood there in the kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Then I looked at the surveillance photo still saved on my phone. Me and Opal on her porch, taken from the tree line by someone who wanted me to know I was being watched. Corinne thought she was warning me. She didn't realize I already understood. Has someone ever told you to back down from something you knew was right? Did you listen, or did you stand your ground? Tell me in the comments, because I made my choice, and I didn't back down. She said, "With your grace and blessing," before I even sat down. I slid the first envelope across the table, then the second, then the third. By the time I reached the fourth, no one in the room was smiling. The Knox County Estate Planning Association held their quarterly board meeting in a conference room at the Marriott downtown. 12 members, all respected attorneys and financial advisors, gathered to discuss industry standards and hand out awards. Tonight's honoree, Bryce Mercer, Distinguished Service to Senior Clients. I'd called ahead, told them I was Walter Hensley, recent widower, and that my son-in-law had helped so much with my wife's estate that I wanted to say a few words of thanks at his award ceremony. They were delighted. A grieving father-in-law publicly expressing gratitude. Perfect optics for their organization. They had no idea. I arrived early, took a seat near the back, watched Bryce work the room in his expensive suit, shaking hands, accepting early congratulations, completely unaware that his world was about to end. The board chair, a silver-haired woman named Constance Reed, called the meeting to order. When she announced the award presentation, she looked at me and smiled. Before we proceed, Mr. Hensley has asked to say a few words. Walter, would you like to come up? Thank you, ma'am, with your grace and blessing. I walked to the front of the room carrying a leather folder. Bryce was beaming. Probably thought I'd finally surrendered. Finally accepted my place as the confused old man who needed his family's guidance. I didn't look at him. Instead, I opened the folder and began distributing envelopes. One to each board member. 12 envelopes. 12 packets of evidence. What is this? Constance asked. Before you honor this man, I said, my voice steady. I thought you should know who you're honoring. The room went silent. Inside those envelopes, you'll find documentation of a pattern. Elderly clients targeted within days of losing their spouses. Forged signatures on property transfers. A notary stamp belonging to a man who died 2.5 years ago. Bank records showing unauthorized transfers. Testimony from a former employee who processed the fraudulent documents. I paused. Let it sink in. My wife, Dolores, gathered this evidence while she was dying of cancer. She knew what was happening. She tried to stop it. She couldn't. But she made sure I could. Board members were opening their envelopes now, reading. Faces shifting from confusion to shock to something harder. Bryce was on his feet. This is ridiculous. This is a family dispute. My father-in-law is confused. He's grieving. I'm not confused, I said quietly. I'm just no longer silent. I turned back to Constance Reed. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. The district attorney's office has already opened a criminal investigation. I just thought you should know who you were honoring tonight. I'll wait outside. I walked out of the conference room. Behind me, the whispers started. Then the arguments. I heard Bryce's voice rising, defensive, desperate. 20 minutes later, Constance Reed found me in the lobby. The award has been postponed pending independent review, she said. Her face was carefully neutral, but her eyes told me everything. The ethics committee will be examining the documentation you provided. Thank you, ma'am. She hesitated. Mr. Hensley, I'm sorry for what you've been through. I nodded and walked toward the parking lot. Bryce caught up with me at my car. His mask was gone. The charming smile, the warm eyes, the loving son-in-law act, all of it stripped away. What remained was cold and hard and mean. You have no idea what you've done, old man. This isn't over. I looked at him, this man who married my daughter, who sat at my dinner table, who called my wife, Mom, while planning to steal everything she built. You're right, I said. It isn't over. But I'm not the one it's just beginning for. I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I watched Bryce, standing in the parking lot, hands clenched, breath visible in the cold air. He followed me for 7 miles. Then he turned off. I didn't sleep that night. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear is for people who don't have evidence. The strongest move in that room was silence. Agree or disagree? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the loudest statement is the one you don't have to make. No confession. Just a statement about protecting the institution and pursuing other opportunities. They gave him a chance to resign. He took it. But he didn't apologize. Men like him never do. The news broke on a Thursday morning. I found out the same way everyone else did, a news alert on my phone while I was making coffee. Nashville financial advisor resigns amid investigation into elder exploitation claims. The article was short on details but long on implications. Bryce's firm had released a statement accepting his resignation, effective immediately, and expressing their commitment to the highest ethical standards in client service. They didn't mention the criminal investigation. They didn't mention the 12 families. They didn't mention the dead notary or the forged signatures or the millions of dollars that had vanished into accounts nobody was supposed to find. But I knew. And soon everyone else would too. The district attorney's office had formally opened an investigation into multiple counts of elder financial exploitation, document fraud, and notary forgery. Webb told me they were looking at federal charges as well, wire fraud, conspiracy, potentially RICO, if they could prove the system was as organized as Meredith's testimony suggested. Bryce wasn't going to jail today, but the walls were closing in. 3 days after his resignation, Corinne filed for divorce. The petition cited irreconcilable differences, but the truth came out in pieces over the following weeks. She'd finally seen the evidence, all of it, including the accounts she didn't know existed, and the transactions she didn't authorize. Bryce had been stealing from other families, yes, but he'd also been hiding money from her, building a separate life she knew nothing about. My daughter had married a man who lied to everyone, including her. The guardianship petition was withdrawn the same week. Without Bryce's legal team pushing it forward, and with the preservation order still in place, there was no point in continuing. The judge made the preservation order permanent, a full injunction protecting all my assets until the criminal investigation concluded. The house on Maple Ridge Road was mine again. The accounts were restored. Everything Dolores and I built over 51 years was safe. But we weren't the only ones. Webb filed a habeas petition for Roderick Ambrose, the man I'd seen behind that window at Pleasant Pines. 2 weeks later, Roderick walked out of the memory care facility under his own power, clear-eyed, furious, determined to get back everything that had been taken from him. Lucille Rayburn began proceedings to recover her home. The forged documents in her case were now part of the DA's investigation, and the transfers were being challenged in civil court. 12 families. 12 chances for justice, all because Dolores refused to die quietly. One evening, I found a note slipped under my front door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with handwriting I recognized. Daddy, I'm sorry. I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I want you to know I'm trying. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand how I became someone Mom couldn't recognize. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I'm not sure I can forgive myself, but I'm trying to find my way back. Your daughter, Corinne. I read it 3 times. Then I set it on the kitchen table next to Dolores's letter, the one she never sent, the one begging our daughter to stop. 2 letters, mother and daughter, both asking for the same thing. I didn't know the answer yet, but I was willing to look for it. Pursue damages against Bryce, or focus on rebuilding the family Dolores loved? What would you choose? Tell me in the comments, because that's the question I had to answer. And the answer wasn't simple. The plaque had weathered, the promise hadn't. I knelt at Dolores's grave and told her everything. The wind picked up as I spoke, like she was leaning in to listen. I hadn't been back to Oak Grove Cemetery since the funeral. Couldn't face it. Couldn't stand there looking at the ground that held the woman I'd loved for more than half my life. But today was different. Today, I had news. I brought yellow roses, the same kind I gave her on our first date, back in 1972 when I was a 23-year-old electrician's apprentice, and she was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen, working the counter at Miller's Hardware. I set them against the headstone. Gray granite, simple inscription. Dolores May Hensley, beloved wife and mother, 1951 to 2024. Then I started talking. We got him, honey. Bryce, we got him. The wind stirred the trees overhead. The preservation order is permanent, the house is safe, your accounts are back where they belong, and the DA's office is building a case that'll put him away for years. I told her about Meredith, the young paralegal who kept records because her grandmother taught her that paper doesn't lie. About Opal Finch, standing guard over the evidence, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this fight. About Webb, who lost his own mother to something similar and made it his mission to stop it from happening to anyone else. You built the case, Dolores. From your hospital bed, while you were dying, you built the case. I just finished what you started. I told her about Roderick Ambrose walking free, about Lucille Rayburn getting her day in court, about the other families, one by one, finding out they weren't alone, and they weren't crazy, and someone was finally going to pay for what happened to them. 12 families, honey. You saved 12 families. Dolores fought alone for months before she died. Now her legacy protects hundreds. Subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. I wiped my eyes, 74 years old and crying at a cemetery, but some tears need to fall. I'm doing something else too, something I think you'd approve of. I decided to donate a portion of the recovered assets, the money Bryce had tried to steal, to establish a legal aid fund for elder exploitation victims. Free legal help for seniors who couldn't afford to fight back on their own. The name, the Dolores Hensley Justice Fund. Your name, honey, your legacy. Helping people like us who don't know where to turn. The wind picked up again. I swear I smelled lavender. Later that week, I met with Opal Finch, one last time. She'd been archiving the case files not for court anymore, but for history. So no one forgets what they did, she said, binding the last folder with a rubber band. And no one forgets how we stopped them. I'd brought Dolores's original documents, the envelope from the church safe, the thumb drive, the letters she never sent. Pastor David helped me place them back in the safe, where they'd remain as a record of what my wife discovered and how she fought to protect us. The safe door clicked shut. She was something special, your Dolores, Pastor David said. Yes, she was. I drove home as the sun was setting. Maple Ridge Road was quiet the way it always was this time of evening, but something was different. In the front garden, pushing up through the last of the winter frost, the first daffodils were blooming, yellow and bright, determined little flowers that refused to wait for warmer weather. Dolores planted those bulbs 30 years ago. Every spring, they came back. Every spring, they reminded me that some things survive no matter what tries to kill them. I found one more envelope in the church safe that day, one Pastor David forgot to mention. Older than the others, my name on the front, but not in Dolores's handwriting. It was mine. A letter I wrote to myself 40 years ago, on our wedding day, about the man I hoped to become. Dolores had kept it all this time. I sat on the porch and opened it. What would you preserve for a future you may never see? What legacy would you leave? Tell me in the comments. Because that's the question, Dolores answered. And her answer saved everything. They didn't applaud loudly. They nodded like people who finally understood. And that was enough. 1 year had passed since Pastor David's phone call changed everything. 1 year since I opened that manila envelope and discovered that my wife had been fighting a war I didn't even know was happening. Now I stood at a podium in the community center on Oak Street, looking out at a room full of faces I didn't recognize. Seniors, mostly. Some with their adult children beside them. A few lawyers and social workers in the back, taking notes. The Dolores Hensley Justice Fund had helped 47 families in its first year, 47 people who would have lost everything without the free legal help we provided. 47 victories that started with one woman's refusal to die without a fight. I cleared my throat and began. My name is Walter Hensley. A year ago, I buried my wife of 51 years, and then I found out that the people I trusted most were trying to steal everything we'd built together. The room was silent, listening. I'm not here to tell you to be suspicious of your family. Most families are good. Most children love their parents. Most people do the right thing. I paused. But some don't. And the ones who don't count on your grief to blind you. They count on your trust to silence you. They count on your exhaustion to stop you from reading the fine print. I looked at the faces in the crowd. Some were nodding. Some were crying. Some looked like they were remembering something they'd pushed aside. Something they'd noticed, but didn't want to believe. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. Know your documents. Know where your deeds are, your wills, your account numbers. Know who has access to your life and your money. And if something feels wrong, if someone asks you to sign something you don't understand, if accounts start moving without your knowledge, if the people around you start treating you like a problem to be managed, instead of a person to be respected, trust that feeling. I gripped the podium. Trust that feeling, because it might be the only warning you get. After the speech, people came up to shake my hand. Some wanted to share their own stories. Some just wanted to say thank you. A woman about my age grabbed my arm and said, "I thought I was the only one. I thought I was going crazy." "You're not crazy," I told her. "You're paying attention. That's the opposite of crazy." Outside, the spring air was soft and warm. The kind of evening Dolores used to love, cool enough for a sweater, warm enough to sit on the porch and watch the fireflies. Pastor David was waiting by the door. So was Opal Finch, leaning on her cane but standing tall. Nadine from the bank, who'd started a fraud detection training program at her branch. Even Meredith Callahan, who'd testified for the prosecution and was now in law school, planning to become exactly the kind of attorney who'd fight for people like us. "Nice speech," Opal said. "Dolores would have done it better. Probably. But she's not here. You are." I smiled at that. Because she was right. Dolores wasn't here. But I was, and that was the whole point. Then I saw her. Corinne stood at the edge of the parking lot. She looked different, thinner, older somehow. The hard edges were gone from her face. In their place was something softer. Something that looked almost like the daughter I remembered. She walked toward me slowly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. Daddy. Corinne. She stopped a few feet away. I watched your speech through the window. I didn't want to come inside. Didn't feel like I had the right. I didn't say anything, just waited. I've been in therapy, she said. Twice a week, trying to understand how I let it happen. How I became someone who could hurt you like that. Her voice cracked. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. I looked at my daughter, 46 years old, the same age Dolores was when we first started talking about retirement, about grandchildren, about all the years we thought we'd have together. Your mother wrote you a letter, I said. Before she died, she never sent it. Corinne's eyes went wide. What? She kept it in her desk, asked you to stop, begged you to remember who you were. I didn't know. I know you didn't know. That's why I'm telling you now. I reached out and took her hand. For a moment, she was 8 years old again, holding my fingers while we walked through the county fair, asking for cotton candy and promising to be good. I can't fix what happened, I said, and I don't know if I can forgive everything. Not yet. But your mother loved you, Corinne, even at the end, even when she was afraid of what you were becoming. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Can I sit with you? She asked. Just for a while? I nodded. Yes, you can sit with me. We didn't fix everything in one conversation. We didn't even fix most of it, but we started. That night, I sat on the porch of the Maple Ridge house and watched the sun go down. Dolores's wind chimes sang in the breeze. Her garden was blooming daffodils and tulips and the first hints of roses. Her handwriting was still on the recipe cards in the kitchen. Her presence was still everywhere, in everything. Around my neck, on a simple chain, I wore the key to the church safe. A reminder that some doors are worth protecting, some truths are worth preserving, some loves never die. The sun went down over Maple Ridge Road, the way it had for 51 years of marriage, and 1 year of learning to live without her. But Dolores was wrong about one thing. She thought she couldn't stop them. She did. She stopped them all. And she did it the only way she knew how, by trusting the man she loved to finish what she started. I owe her that. I owe her everything. And every morning I wake up in this house she saved, I tell her so, out loud. Because love like that deserves to be spoken. Even now, especially now. Thanks for walking this road with me and Dolores. If our story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A parent, a grandparent, a friend who might not know the signs. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who can hurt us most. But sometimes, if we're lucky, we find the people who refuse to look away. Be that person. For someone. Today. If this story touched something in you, hit that subscribe button. Not because I'm asking, but because there are more stories like this one. And the people in them need witnesses. Share this with someone whose parents are getting older. Drop a comment with the one line you'll carry with you. And remember, the most powerful protection isn't lawyers or courts. It's paying attention. It's refusing to be erased. It's love that keeps fighting even after goodbye. Drop the one line from this story you'll never forget. And tell me, who in your life needs to hear Walter and Dolores's story?